Okay, so I'm recording. So if you guys want to blow or whatever. And
Ready, Eddie?
ready?
You ready, Eddie?
Yeah, there you go. Good, good, good.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
So could you do something?
You take
Can we-
requests.
Kind of recap seven
Yeah.
and kind of
Yeah,
tie in
yeah.
there?
I'm going to do a review because we've been gone for a week.
Yeah.
Who would like to open in prayer? Anybody?
Okay.
You will? Okay.
Oh, Father God, just please be with us today. Let Anna speak your words of what you want her to convey to us so that we can understand the words in your Bible and take it to heart. And let the Holy Spirit be here today. There's more than two gathered, so the Holy Spirit, we ask you to come and join us and help us pray for everybody that traveled and help them to go home safe and have a good week. Help Kevin and Marissa through their difficulty of the government shutting down, and just bless them with some way of being able to continue in taking care of the children with no interruptions of financial problems. And Father,
I pray especially for men like Lee Rice, Tony Pellegrino, Jones, all the men, John Hall, what's his name, all the men that are involved in bringing this country back to its original state, if possible. But it's in your plan that we want that to happen, not just man's plan. So just protect them all, Father, and provide for them. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. Anybody else can pray.
Were you finished praying?
yeah, I'm good.
Hallelujah. Abba, I want to thank you and praise you for this day. I thank you for leading and guiding us and showing us your way. We're getting into the real meat of Revelation, and it's tough. It's help us to see clear and accurately what your word means. It's not my ideas, but what your word really means. Shut my mouth when I'm saying things that shouldn't be said, and lead and guide everything, our conversation today, and give us clear understanding of your word and help us to apply it to our lives.
Hallelujah.
I thank you and I praise you. I thank you, Abba, for your mighty, mighty ways. In Yahushua HaMashiach. Amen. And the kids ready to go?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, I know. I heard you.
Did they go outside?
They may have ran up.
You're going to have to go round them up. You look like a Basque sheep herder.
Yeah, just went to go see the goat first.
I told them they couldn't go until their dad came out there to see the goats. They couldn't go up there. I was reinforcing what you said.
Okay. Well, let's do a recap, a quick review from what we've learned so far, because now we're like right in the heart of Revelation. Do you guys have any questions so far?
Just tie it in for us.
Okay. So is it still really clear that all of this happened by AD 70?
It is to me.
Not really.
Just to you. Okay, not you, really to you. How about you, Marissa, and you?
Yeah, I know that.
That really helped me. Well,
So far,
I'm
yeah.
about halfway through that.
So far?
Yeah, I think
far?
so.
Was it in
I think so. At least definitely the letters. I agree with that.
Well, I think it's
Definitely
it's clear that it is
Matthew
history.
and some of those things that we've read. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna do a quick recap because
It was on the bookcase.
earlier
The
today,
bookcase. Sorry.
Nancy had some really
I'm just-
good questions because we went over the 144,000 last week and or 2 weeks ago,
Right.
and we've all have in our minds that all that's in the future. You know, we've been taught that so fluidly
Right.
that there's the specific people that are those people and who are they and they're in our future and all this stuff.
So I guess one thing that would help me is that now that you're talking, is that this is all God's talking to John and he's writing it down.
Mhm.
Yes, and then John gives it to the churches.
Okay, right. Okay,
Okay, the first century churches, and then but I want to show you something.
okay.
If we go back to
Uh-huh.
Revelation chapter 1,
Uh-huh.
verse 1,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
realize it says the revelation of Yahushua HaMashiach, which
Gave.
Yah gave to him to show to his bondmen or his servants
Yeah.
Yeah.
what must take place quickly
Quickly.
or soon. This is the
Yes.
whole revelation. And so now we're in the heart of that revelation.
Yeah.
Now let's
Yeah.
turn to the end of Revelation because we're getting into some stuff that's like, wait a second. No, this is the future. No, I don't get what you're
Okay,
saying. Yeah.
So now we're going from that to the. what is
Yeah,
it?
these are called bookends. Now we're going to go to the end of Revelation and we're going to read again. So, so he goes all the way through Revelation and we're going into like chapter 22.
Yeah.
Um,
What verse?
I will get in there. I'm doing this from memory, so let's.
Like 12? When Jesus testifies to the churches?
Okay, so it says. Okay, go to 22:10.
22:10. Okay.
Let's see if I need to back up any.
There's 7. These
Um,
are coming.
Should we verse 7?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
7.
Okay. So wait. Let's back up to 22:7.
Okay.
Behold, I come quickly. Blessed is the one who is giving heed to the words of the prophecy of this scroll.
Okay.
And I, John, am the one hearing this and seeing these things. And when I heard and saw, I fell to the obeisance before the feet of the angel, showing to me these things. Now what things? All the things in this section right here, the whole entire book of
Whole book of
Revelation. Okay.
Revelation. Okay.
And he says to me, see that you do not, for I am your fellow servant and your brothers of the prophets and of the one giving heed to the words of this scroll.
Okay, now,
Just wait.
See
And
that you do not.
and
Yeah.
God, and to God to do obeisance. Okay. And he says to me, you should not set a seal upon the words of the prophecy of this scroll, for the time is near.
Okay.
Okay, so now remember we talked about the scroll. Now we've been undoing the seals of this scroll.
Mhm.
Right.
The scroll he speaks of is the very scroll we believe that Daniel spoke about, and the Ruach told Daniel, or the angel told Daniel, seal this up for the time of the end.
Right.
To the time.
Yeah. Till the
Okay,
end.
so now here's the time of the end of what? And now in Daniel it says that the end of your people,
Oh.
the destruction of your people,
Okay.
not the end of the world.
No, it's the end of the age.
Yeah, and the end of the age, and the age now we've learned is the old covenant age,
Okay.
the temple age,
Yeah.
the sacrificial system age. So now we see. Now he's saying not to seal it up, for this time is near, and then it continues on. Now he goes back in verse 13, which he started out with in chapter 1. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Blessed are the ones observing his commandments. Their authority will be unto the tree of life and the gate houses. They should enter unto the city. Okay, so now do you see why I believe all of this has to be about that? And it started then and continues. It's the beginning of the new covenant. The throwing down of the old covenant and the beginning of the new covenant and the new covenant age. The age to come that the scriptures always talk about, the age to come is the new covenant age. Because the old covenant age was passing away, but has not yet, because the temple was still standing.
Okay.
When all of the New Testament was written, the temple was still standing.
Right.
And until that temple was destroyed, the new covenant couldn't have its full realization.
Right.
It had started,
Yeah, right.
had it began, but it couldn't fully develop because there were
Because of
still
the-
animal
right,
sacrifices
right,
going on,
right.
and there was still a lot of confusion.
Right.
Some Christians were still doing sacrifices, others weren't.
Did you read 22:14?
22:14.
I don't know if you.
No.
blessed
I
are-
did 13.
Blessed are the ones observing his commandments that. Wait a minute.
Yeah, I read that.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
That-
their
so-
authority unto the tree of life.
Life, yeah. So that is
The
a whole
10
different
Commandments. Yeah.
situation than 70 AD, isn't it?
No. We just read all of, we started it out. We read the beginning, Nancy.
Yes.
We read the beginning of Revelation. And it said these
Yeah.
things are soon to take place.
Yes.
And then we read the end, these things are soon to take place. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But realize that a lot of what we're going to read is what started then and continues into the present.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That's the understanding I'm looking for.
Yes. That started then and continue because it's the beginning of the new covenant age.
I
The
guess,
new way of doing things.
and I don't know,
Does that
maybe
make
this is something
sense?
we need to do after, or I don't know if it's something we can do while. But I'm like, okay, if we're saying that Revelation or what we're talking about was talking about 70 AD.
Mhm.
Okay, so then what was there anything written for those who would be around after 70 AD? And what are we supposed to do with that?
See,
Like,
yeah.
how am I supposed to take that? 'Cause
Yeah.
I guess
That's
that's
what
I
we need
feel like
to
what's
apply.
happening is
That
like,
we need to learn
okay,
how to apply.
this isn't okay. So if this happened in 70 AD, then where
What
are
about
we?
us?
Yeah,
That's what.
yes.
That's
Okay.
what.
That's what I feel like I'm missing.
Yes.
I'm like,
Okay. The
Well,
age that because the church has always taught us that the reason for our salvation is because the time of the end, and we got to go out and share the gospel
to
for the
heaven.
time of the end in order, to get to heaven and the time of the end of the world.
Yeah.
And Jesus is coming back,
But
and we got okay. So now it talks about the age to come, all through the Gospels, all through the letters. Talks about the age to come, and we've tasted and seen, and it talks about the end of the age, and realize that the entire New Testament was written before the temple was destroyed.
so in First or Second Timothy, it talks about the latter times.
Yeah.
Do you think that would be something that would apply to us?
The latter
right
times
now?
would
Or
mean
is
the
it talking about
last
70
days.
AD?
Well, then that they are in the latter times then, and we are the age to come, the new covenant age. Does that make
Can
sense?
I suggest this? We're looking at the destruction of the old covenant, or the doing away of the old covenant,
Yes.
the institution of the new covenant, which we are new covenant believers.
Yes.
So eventually,
Yes.
this is going to catch up to us.
Yes, and
So I just need to be
actually,
patient.
and
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
So now we're
I
involved
think.
in yes. Okay, so what I looked at, what I'm really starting to get a clue at, is what I just read is about the scroll. Okay, remember he started to he got to see the scroll, and they were saying, "Who's worthy to open the seals of the scroll?" This whole entire book of Revelation is about this scroll. Okay, and we can't lose sight of that. And then there's these seals. Now we're about to open the seventh seal. Now what I discovered, what I believe, and I could be wrong, but within this seal, the seventh seal, is the trumpets, the seven trumpets, the seven bowls, the seven, all these different things, and it blows up, but it's still the seventh seal. It's still it blows up to the rest of Revelation is the seventh seal, because it's about the scroll.
What do you mean by what's going to catch up to us?
Where are we
You
in
said
all of?
this.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
gonna
I
see
don't know about this
Well, remember,
specifically, but I think we're going to see in
Yeah.
the new covenant where we are
and
in the
it's
new
amazing.
covenant.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Like, okay, I think it was last time we read about the 144,000,
Mhm.
and I believe they're completely past. They were the first believers that came on the scene, and they spread the gospel. Now, and then we saw the multitude, the great multitude, that began then and continues to the present. That is the new covenant believers that enter into the kingdom, and then we saw the kingdom of the priesthood that were at work. That's not just after we die.
That's
And we
now.
that's anyone who enters into the kingdom of Yah now. We are in the kingdom, and that started then and continues into the present.
We are
Does that
of
make
the
sense?
Melchizedek
About
priesthood.
these Bibles, all of our Bibles, when it says world, it's not world.
It means
It's
they're
age.
well.
It's just an age.
Yeah, the age, and then that says in here, like the end of the world. The King James put the end of the world. It's the end of the age. It's the end of the eon.
Eon in its age, right.
And cosmos is world.
Uh-huh.
And the cosmos,
So for God to love the, what does that say?
world,
Cosmos.
That does say
the
cosmos.
cosmos.
Should say
Okay.
cosmos.
Yeah,
I think it says that. I've read it.
it's been a while. But
Well,
does that make
It'll
sense?
have the
Because
word in your.
now
in your
we're
book.
getting into this hairy stuff, the stuff that
John
we
3:16.
we've
The book is
learned-
right. The word's right there.
They improperly use that word world in John 3:16.
No, they didn't.
No,
That
they
is
used to
correct.
write.
That's what
John
I
is
was
John
then
is
they-
John. This
they
is
improperly
Because-
used it in-
other places.
Yeah, well, the land, the earth, okay, in Revelation, so many places, actually every place we've seen so far where they have the word earth, it's actually land.
It's
They
their-
just mistranslated
their
it. It's the land of Israel. Always when they said the land, they meant the land of Israel.
Because they didn't really,
It was about the land of Israel.
they didn't know about the other parts of the world.
And
Look at that,
they didn't
Mommy.
care because
Yeah.
they're of the nations. That
Right.
didn't matter. But we saw in Revelation chapter 7 that every tribe, tongue, and nation was coming in
To the temple. Is that-
and was coming into the kingdom.
Okay.
And they were the priests.
Okay.
And that's us. That's us. And that continues to the end of, that continues for always.
And to be in the kingdom of God means that we study His Word, we
You're a
try,
believer.
we're a believer, but we're also trying to put the Holy Spirit in us and live in with Jesus and God in our heart every day and bring God's kingdom to everybody.
Yeah, see,
It-
when we get born again, when we have that born again experience, we die to ourselves
Right, we
and we
die.
become alive
Right, in Christ.
and we become new creatures.
right.
And that death, burial, and resurrection,
Mm-hmm.
it's a spiritual resurrection. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And then we enter into the kingdom at that time, and we may be babies, and the kingdom of Yah may be little in us, be a seed in us. It's all we've known is the world, but
Right.
we become, He transforms us into that new creature
Right.
over
It is
time.
cosmos.
And then we, hear and obey? That,
Yeah.
Well, we are-
that's probably what I
We
would
are
say.
and
we
then-
are transformed by the renewing
and
of
the
our mind.
Holy Spirit begins to help us to walk in the Spirit. That's what it means. And then we're obeying the commandments automatically. And we get it. I know when I got born again, suddenly we could no longer have premarital sex.
Right,
Suddenly,
yeah.
in one day, nobody told me, you
Right.
better stop.
Right.
It wasn't because I read the Bible.
Well, somebody told
The
you.
Holy
it wasn't.
Spirit.
It was the
Because
Holy
the
Spirit.
The Spirit of the living God was in
The
there.
Spirit
saying,
of the living God, He
"Kiss,
changed my
kiss,
life.
honey."
And I didn't learn these things are
That's the way
wrong,
he works.
but He put it in me. I became a new creature
Right.
at that moment. And then I began to walk in His ways, and He convict me of this, convict me of that, convict. And I was like, I got it, and I had to, I couldn't live under that old way anymore.
Right.
I couldn't, and feel good about myself. So then that begins the battle between the flesh and the
Sure.
spirit,
Yeah. The flesh and
That's
the spirit.
warring.
Yeah.
which we didn't have before in the BC
Right.
days.
Right.
We didn't have that battle. Man, we loved sin,
Yeah.
and sin
Well, it was
had its way in
natural.
us.
It was natural.
Yeah, we were living as brute beasts.
Yeah, there was no conflict of interest.
Absolutely no conflict. So as we continue, that's why I decided I want to go through Revelation. I'm doing this for not for you, just for you guys, but for me. I want to go through Revelations, and I want to see this for myself
Me too.
and see how it would actually follow through all the way through in AD 70.
Right.
What the new covenant, what the first early church saw all the way through Revelation.
Right.
How did they see it? Because it was written to them.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then we can apply it to us,
Cool.
and not get all, I don't know what you call it,
I just kind of feel like I'm
sci-fi
hanging
on
right
us.
now,
Yeah,
you know?
sci-fi. Yeah,
You know,
it's okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we're done on 70, where am I? It's
Yeah.
2018.
Well, see, I've heard people say, well, if it's all in the past, why do we even need to read this? What's the whole motive? Why?
Well, because it's not all.
But then that uncovers the true motive behind why they even read the Bible in the first place.
Well,
Because
they
they
knew
felt
their
like it
Bible.
was, well, like people.
Some did.
Yeah.
People. I'm talking about people today. People would come up and say, well, if it's all about in the past and this was all fulfilled, why even read it? Because the reason why they were reading their Bibles is to see where they fit in.
How it applied
What's
to
going to
them.
happen in their world, in their future. How many people do you know that have that are all into the feasts to find out what's going to happen in their future?
Mhm.
They're all into, they're going to look in the Bible and say, oh, this is what's going to happen. It has nothing to do with their relationship with Almighty Yah.
That's right. That's right. And that's what the biggest thing
That's fortune telling. People want
Yes.
fortune telling, not
Oh,
relationship with
yeah.
the Creator.
yeah. And
Yes,
that's
and
the
they
whole
got to
thing.
find out but the Bible was written so that we can find that so we can discover who He is and how He relates to people
Mhm.
to build within us.
And that He loves us and in our
And He used Israel as an example.
yeah.
There you go.
They were a living example. And and that's what they are all the way through, and up until he started them and He ended them.
Mhm.
It was the beginning and the
In
end,
the end, yeah.
and he ended them. And then New Covenant Israel is us.
Awesome.
That's the way it is.
I love it.
And we're solidly in the New Covenant.
Mm-hmm.
And now in Revelation it talks about the New Covenant.
Now we're
It
learning
shows
what the new covenant
how the
is.
end of it, the destruction of it, and the rebuilding of the New
Mhm,
Covenant.
mhm.
And we'll see that it's more toward the end too. And because we've always read it as, oh, this is heaven.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But we have access to the New Jerusalem now.
Right.
And we see that in Hebrews and Galatians.
Yeah.
That we're to seek the New Jerusalem.
Interesting though, at the beginning from Genesis 1:1 to Leviticus 23:11, was it? Like Nolan teaches.
Oh,
That's
no.
Leviticus, right?
Exodus.
Exodus.
24:11.
24:11.
Yeah.
That they had the Melchizedek priesthood
Yeah.
stuff, and then later, what we're talking about, the new covenant began. So I don't know how those two fit together.
Well, it talked, what we read, they're a kingdom of, they said in Revelation 1, so we are a kingdom of priests.
Right.
Right.
Always have been.
We
So they
are
have-
a
so
kingdom of
they-
priests.
Okay.
And
so,
the Melchizedek, I watched, listened to a study. Melchizedek priesthood has always been in history.
Okay.
Always been. It's transferred from person to person,
So on
and
that point where
and
this
then the
new covenant
Levitical
started.
priesthood, Aaronic,
Yeah.
was parallel with it,
Yeah.
and then Aaronic fell, dead, gone.
Yeshua.
Oh,
now
yeah,
Yeshua.
yeah, yeah.
Question.
That was
During the time when they were parallel,
Yeah.
okay, were they hand chosen by the Father, or could anybody seek a better thing than the Aaronic priesthood? I mean, did anybody ever look for something better, or were they just called out by the Lord?
See,
Or-
well,
or-
well, I think for the kingdom of Israel, because this is all about the history of Israel,
right.
because of their great sin,
Mhm.
he chose Aaron,
Okay.
and you could only be in Aaron,
Okay.
even if other
That's
people
the
wanted
way
it,
it
because
was-
they would destroy them
Correct.
if they were not appointed to
But the
be a part of
Melchizedek
that.
were handpicked by
Yeah,
the
the
Father
Melchizedek is what does Melchizedek mean?
Righteous.
the righteous king.
The kingdom, yeah, the king of righteousness,
Mhm.
and it's Yahusha that is the king of righteousness.
Mhm.
But see, you're,
Confusing.
detail. I want details. So she asked a question and you answered part of it.
Okay.
But so God chooses them, but doesn't God instruct the king of that time to appoint them
To honor them.
to be the high priest?
See, I haven't studied that so intently. I watched a study.
Oh.
I can't answer all
I
your
think
questions
you know what I bet
I
they
mean,
were
because-
a
God
mystery.
couldn't just say,
because
okay, Aaron, you're the head priest, but
There's
nobody
so-
else knows that.
there's so little known
Okay.
written in the scripture about the Melchizedek.
Yeah.
But anyone that
Because
any
it was-
king that walked in righteousness,
Well,
if that makes and in the earlier days it would
Just
they in the very early days
they
they weren't supposed to have a king
right.
because Yahuwah was their king.
And
That's
even
why they
after-
appointed judges. They wanted a king like the nations, an
Right,
earthly
right.
king.
But even after God told whoever the king was, that's where Deuteronomy comes in, the law, the
Yeah.
law, whatever that meant to them. They had to handwrite it. If they made a
Yeah.
mistake, they had to start
Yeah.
all over again,
Yeah.
and they could be on the very last
Well-
verse, the very last word of the whole thing, and he
We
had to
don't-
start over.
We don't know the details, but he obviously
Well-
maintained the Melchizedek
And,
throughout
and
history.
you're thinking
so
of like an earthly kingdom,
Yeah,
but think of what king of
Well,
righteousness.
king-
What does that mean? That the king rules over righteousness,
but
not necessarily a
No.
dominion of a place.
no, but God appointed the
The king.
priests, and then I mean the king.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's the one that instructed them
Yes.
to write the
Yes.
law on your heart. Okay, well that meant really getting
Yes.
into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because he wanted them to be kings of righteousness.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think it can be
But-
answered.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Honestly,
anyway,
I don't think it can.
I
I like
that's
how
a
you-
study in itself.
I like how you
does that make
started with
sense?
the parallel.
Mhm.
Okay, so like Melchizedek was going, and then boom, they all of a sudden had to have, like the Aaronic priesthood
Yeah.
that started. And then you
Because
said it fell off.
yeah,
and I'm like,
because
hey,
he originally
Yeah.
told them to be a kingdom of priests, to be a holy nation, to show the
Okay.
world.
And then
Yahuwah.
they did the golden
It
calf.
was all
Yeah.
about showing the world
Yeah.
who he was, the one true God. Because at that time, all of the then known world were polytheists.
Yeah.
They,
So when the Aaronic went boom, was that when
AD
John was
70.
beheaded? Was that when his dad died?
that was when the
Or
temple was destroyed.
that happened
And
in
then
AD
Yeshua
70?
became
Okay,
the
so that
last
was well
ultimate
after
high
John
priest.
died and his dad. So
To
okay,
John,
so-
well after John, who John, the
The
one that
Baptist,
wrote
John
this?
the
Oh
Baptist,
yes, well see, the
That's
true
okay, you-
priest,
you
but
just
yeah,
cleared it up.
so they had to destroy that temple. A temple had to be
It
destroyed,
had to be.
and it has been destroyed previously. I mean, the King Herod built that temple that we're talking about, and it was brand new. It was barely even there, and it was so essentially probably the kingdom was supposed to end. It kept getting destroyed, and they kept rebuilding it. And I think if they would build a new one, it'll be destroyed again.
Oh yeah.
It shows the determination of man's sin.
Yeah. And the fact that they haven't been able to rebuild it in 2,000 years since Yahushua came, that's powerful.
Mhm.
When they were able to rebuild it, I don't know how many times. It was like the
Yeah.
fourth temple or something.
So we don't have anybody else joining us?
No, it's probably because we took that break. That's what
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
But it's recording, and so
And
that's
they can
fine.
watch it later.
Yeah.
Or listen to it later.
Yeah, they can
Okay,
watch it, and
so
we're gonna pick back up.
So we're
so
gonna.
we finished 7, now we're doing 8.
Yes. So does that answer some of your guys' questions?
I'll just be patient.
You'll be patient.
I'm like you though. It's like, okay,
So what does this have to do with
so-
me?
Okay,
Yeah.
so
And it's
I
not
have
as
a
in like a
question,
selfish thing,
No.
as it's as in like
Why bother?
Yes,
it
No.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
I'm not being negative.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
It
Because-
most certainly is
You
not.
talk to God about that.
Okay,
And
guys.
it will be sent to the woodshed.
because it's just like, how am I supposed to be living? Or well,
Yeah.
not necessarily how am I supposed to be living. I guess it's how am I supposed to be teaching this? Does that make
Yes.
sense? How can I
Yes.
share this?
And
How
that's
can I
what
be
we'll
like,
get to. We'll
you
get
know,
to
so
because that's
just
what the
be
next the next study is the kingdom of Yah. I really want to get into the kingdom and what it is to me to live out the kingdom in our lives. And that's applying this.
Because that's what we should have been.
As new covenant
being taught,
believers,
you know.
true, but we have to
Yeah.
get this foundation down because we
Because
don't
we
get
can't.
it.
I can't teach it to anybody.
Because we're
yet.
still
Yeah.
preaching the vast majority of the
We-
body of Messiah is still preaching the kingdom is yet to come.
When really it's
When
now.
really it's
When
now.
it really it's now.
We still
They're
have too
living in
much
this
church in us.
intertestamental period. And as I've studied this and I've studied people, is I have this passion about studying people and why people do what they do. That's why I went into human behavior. I'm realizing there's people that are clung to the old covenant and they're
Sure.
stuck in the old covenant.
Oh yeah.
And then there's people that are in the intertestamental period of the old and new covenant, and that's
Mhm.
where a lot of Hebrew roots are.
Mhm.
They're trying to live out the old covenant and the new covenant at the same time.
They're trying to figure
And
out
they're
wh-
like,
where
because
they
the
belong
whole
here.
New Testament is there, and a lot of Christianity's there, the
Mhm.
legalistic Christians,
Mhm.
they're there, but yet we're living the new covenant, but yet we have to obey this.
Mhm.
And because the entire New Testament was written during that time, so they're reading it as if it's for them at that moment,
Yeah.
not realizing that the whole new covenant has come in and the temple's been destroyed, and then there's this new way of living, and it's powerful. And we don't have to be so obsessed with, oh my goodness, if I do this wrong, if I, like we were talking about abortion, oh, we can't let nobody know I got pregnant and I got it because I'm a good Christian girl, and and we got to do away with this baby because I'm a good Christian girl, and we can't let nobody know. Those kind of things. Because I live under the law still. No, I don't. I'm in the new covenant.
No, I don't. Yeah.
That whole
No
thing
wonder the
going
world
on.
is nuts.
Yeah. And then what the
Don't know if
truly
they're
being
walking
born
on
again
horseback.
is. What does it really mean to enter into the kingdom?
Yeah.
Is it just saying the sinner's prayer
No.
and learning about Jesus?
You have to know what the kingdom
Yes.
is.
And because we can teach
Jesus
your
inside of
children, you can teach your children the entire whole Bible, and they never get born again.
That's right.
And they think that they're Christians because mom and dad are Christians, and I know the whole Bible.
That's right.
But if they don't have that truly born again experience, there's something missing. And then they can't identify that time, that moment when life changed. I mean, they're born brute beasts, whether they like it, whether we like it or not. We see that they have issues. They're under your blessing now. If they die right now, they're entering the kingdom immediately because they're under your blessing. But there is an age when they come into that age of accountability, and and that's when they have to choose for themselves, and they have to walk through that dying to themselves and being born anew, being
It's such a
resurrected.
huge amount to die to yourself.
Yeah,
That's what I'm talking about.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then we continually
I better catch on.
when the old covenant, when the old self tries to resurrect, we have to kill it again.
Yeah.
And he tries to resurrect, kill it again. But yeah,
We don't have to
working
do
out our
anything.
salvation.
We don't
Yeah,
have to do anything.
he does it.
He does
Yeah, It's
He did it,
powerful.
he does it.
Can't do
It's
that.
powerful.
We're
So
incapable of it.
yeah, if that makes sense. You're tired. Ready for go to sleepy.
Bad mama ready to swim.
Yeah.
Let's
Chapter.
go
So let's take a look at chapter 8.
Okay.
I did this study last Sunday, so I have like gobs of notes. So we're gonna try to go through this. But okay, so now we're starting the 7th seal. Within the 7th seal is now the 7 trumpets. I never realized that they were
I thought
I
they
thought
were
they were
all
all separate, but they're not. Within the 7th seal, because we're all still in the scroll, and now we just read at the end of Revelation that it's all about this scroll. Do not seal up this scroll, because the time is near. The time is now. So I'm realizing that the rest of Revelation is most likely the 7th seal. It's the last opening, and now he's fully opening up what this whole thing is, if that makes sense. The whole revealing. So who would like to
And number
start?
7 means, this is important,
Okay, tell us.
spiritual perfection.
Yes.
Perfection.
Yeah. So yeah.
So that means a lot to me. And reading
Yeah,
this.
there's 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls.
Yeah.
I don't know. Are there 7 woes?
I
Can't
don't know.
remember.
I don't
There's a
remember.
woes and
We'll get there,
yeah,
right?
we'll get there. Yeah. I'm studying this as we go, so I tried to go ahead, but there's so much. It's so deep. So anyway, who would like to read verses 1 to 6?
I will.
Okay.
When he opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Then another angel, having a golden censer, came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense, that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints ascended before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth. And there were noises and thunderings and lightnings and earthquake.
And 6, verse 6.
Oh, you want me to read 6? Okay. So the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound.
Okay. Yeah. So now do you see how the 7 trumpets are within the 7th
Mhm.
seal?
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, yeah, okay.
You kind of
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll have to read
verse
it
1 it
again.
says when he opened the 7th seal, and then
Okay.
they start.
If you think of it like you've got this big scroll and you unroll it a little bit and then there's a seal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can't go any further
Yeah.
until it's appointed time to break that seal.
Yeah. Now,
Then you go a little further and
Yeah.
there's another seal.
yeah. And then at the end there's like, oh, well, I'll give you the rest of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you remember him talking about the prayers of the saints in the past
Yes, because we were
scriptures?
talking about that a lot, didn't we?
Yes,
And
we
did that
did.
come up? Was it in 6 or 5 or something?
Is that the 24? What
The 24 elders? No.
Oh, okay, that's
No,
different.
the prayers of the saints. And remember we talked about the martyrs, the cries of the martyrs, and the reason why the judgment had to happen, the whole entire reason. Do you remember that?
Because
Because
they
they
killed the prophets.
Because they killed the prophets, and the blood of the righteous,
That
all
was
of the righteous
crying out.
was crying out, and
Right.
it was put upon them. They had to be judged for all of the blood of the righteous.
Right,
From Abel on.
right.
So now we're seeing the cry of the saints again. And remember, it said, let's see if it was back here. The 5th seal, 6-9, 6-9 through the 11. And they had white robes. Let's see. They were crying out, saying, How long, O Master, the holy and true, do you not judge and avenge our blood from the one dwelling upon the land? And white robes were given to each, and it was said to them that they should rest yet a time until which they should be fulfilled, both their fellow servants and their brothers are about to be killed as they were. So now we know during this time, in AD 67 period, by AD 67, I believe the AD 67, 68, the vast majority of the New Testament was written by that point. The apostles joined with the martyrs. The apostles and those early 144,000 began to get killed left and right. Okay, so they were waiting yet a little while. Now the cry of the saints, they began to pour out and overwhelm. And this is what we see now. The seventh seal is what we see, the fruition of that judgment. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so let me look at my notes now. Oh.
Okay, you read through 6.
Yeah, I read through 6. So it's
Okay, so now we're back on chapter 8. And let's see.
He's talking to his body.
He's absolutely.
So mine it says in here Revelation 4:5. Let's see what that. It probably has to do with the prayers of the martyrs again. And yeah, in my notes I have Revelation 4:5. Let's take a look at that real
4:5 says, and from out of the throne went forth lightnings and voices and thunders, and 7 lamps of fire were burning before his throne, which are 7 spirits of God.
Okay.
7 spirits of God.
that's in Isaiah
And
11,
then-
1 through 3. The 7 spirits.
Okay. So for some reason and then I have Revelation 8. It says Revelation 4:5 and Revelation 8:3-5 equal Exodus 19:16. So let's take a quick
So
look
say
at
that again. 4, 5, and then what was the
In
next?
Revelation 8:3-5, which you just read. So that would be, and another angel came and stood at the altar having a golden censer, and given to him many incense, that he should offer the prayers of the holy ones upon the golden altar before the throne. And the smoke ascended of the incense ascended in the prayers of the holy ones from out of the angel.
What was the Exodus reference?
Okay, Exodus 19:16. So let's go there real fast.
And it came to pass in the 3rd day, happening towards dawn, and there were voices and lightnings and overcast clouds upon Mount Sinai. The sound of the trumpet sounded greatly, and all the people were terrified in the camp. And Moses led the people for a meeting with God from out of the camp. Am I? Oh,
Yeah.
All right. Am I still going?
It just said that. one
Okay, that was
verse.
17.
19:16.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have clouds again.
So we have
Yeah,
clouds.
clouds
We
and
have the
lightning
voices and the trumpet. We have voices and the trumpets. So now we see the image, the picture that the early believers who read this would have.
Mhm.
1960.
And what was instituted at that time?
The law.
The law.
Mhm.
So
Wait, what? Where?
in 1916 and on, we have the 10 Commandments and the breaking of the 10 Commandments, and then the law was established.
Mhm.
So
I didn't
Mount
think that
Sinai.
Okay.
Well, God was wanting to come. That's when God was wanting to come
That was
down.
when he told them he wanted to be a kingdom of priests.
Wanted to come down and see him
The
face to
holy
face and
nation.
Yes,
talk
but
to him.
the 10 Commandments, they're in the book of the law,
Oh,
but they
yes.
are not,
Yes.
they were also before the book
Yes,
of the law.
I'm not coming against that.
No. Sorry. I was talking to somebody. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
We had the book of the law, and then they were breaking. They did the golden calf, and 'cause remember Moses came down and shattered them.
But what I want to say is you can legalistically observe the 10 Commandments and still not be born again.
Exactly.
Sure.
Anyone
Yeah,
can
yeah,
do that.
yeah. Okay.
Totally, but yeah, if you're
Um,
telling me you have the Spirit and you're breaking all the 10 Commandments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because when you walk by the Spirit, you will automatically walk under the commandments if you're truly born again. If you're not walking by the Spirit, then you're not. It's evident. But yeah. So anyway, so what I'm saying is now they see this wording. It takes them back to the beginning, the original, what he intended for us to live by, to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, and this is our covenant. Okay, so he brings it back, and then what, they broke that covenant. They broke it. So he has to destroy what they broke. He has to destroy all of that. In what does Matthew call it? God's. It's not God's perfect will, it's his permissive will.
Oh,
Yeah.
And that's when the Aaronic priesthood was developed. That,
Belima and Philema.
you know, and all of that. So it had to be destroyed. All of the temple laws, and the law was instituted as a testament against them. Remember in Deuteronomy 34? As a testament against them. And so it had to be destroyed.
You need to start bringing an extra shirt.
So
So you guys have to put up a cinnamon clove. for
okay.
me.
So now we get
Oh, it smells good. It's all right.
now we get that picture.
Okay.
That picture that now they're back at Mount Sinai. Remember in Galatians it talks about Sinai and Mount Zion, and you choose the not necessarily you, but you have to make a choice between the sisters, the Hagar or Sarah.
Oh, Sarah.
Yeah.
And Sarah, Hagar represented Mount Sinai and the law and the physical Jerusalem and the temple,
Yeah.
and then Sarah represents the
Jerusalem.
New Jerusalem, walking in the Spirit, and I can't remember all the temple, the spiritual temple, and all of that.
The child of the covenant.
So now he's showing us. Okay, here's Mount Sinai, the Mount Sinai experience. Okay, and let's see what else. I'm gonna lose my mouth.
Oh, that
I
was
know.
in Exodus, though.
You're gonna lose your
Yeah.
what?
So now we're
Okay, and then so within the seven seals, are the seven angels and the seven trumpets.
Yeah.
And an eighth angel has the prayers of the saints, which go before Yahuwah as a sweet fragrance. And there's a half an hour of silence.
Yeah.
Why do you think there's a half an hour of silence?
worship. I don't
Wasn't there
know.
something about Yeshua and half hour?
It's in the very first
With
sentence.
the altar, him doing it since his name, Holy Ones of all.
I really think it's, you know how you,
Or
let's
is
say,
it,
get
is it
like
not
a
literal? Maybe
reverence.
it's not literal.
Oh, I
Well,
think it's literal.
think about it.
Yeah, I think
Like,
it's-
I mean, it's really telling me that the seriousness of this seal. It's about to be opened.
Yes,
Oh
yes.
my goodness, the
Yeah.
last and final seal. Oh my goodness, this is it, guys. And then they're dead silent,
Uh-huh.
like
You're right.
like somebody just you hear over the news, some major person was just killed or something. I'm sure there was a holy silence when Kennedy was killed,
Oh yeah.
and everybody.
There was. I
Everything
was
drops.
I was getting ready for. I was in a class and there was like 45 girls in there. We were getting ready for PE in this room, and somebody had their transistor radio on, and it was like everybody just. What?
What? What's a transistor radio?
Oh, so, it's like- and they were 7th and 8th graders, you know, and everybody just stopped, and we just looked at that, and we looked at each other, you know, and trying to, because
And you're in
everybody,
dead
we were
silence.
in dead silence.
So like this, I think it represents that somberness of
Yeah,
like,
I
oh my
agree.
goodness, something's
What?
about ready to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Something-
close-
Got their attention.
Yeah. And like, okay. And you hear the drum roll.
Yeah.
And then we're getting ready to open this seventh seal, and oh my goodness, it's like all of hell
And
breaks
great
loose.
anticipation.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awe,
like
awe
overwhelming.
and wonder and.
Yeah. And then the final seal is opened.
Mhm.
So now we go into the first trumpet,
Okay.
verses starting
Seven.
at
Verse 7.
verse 7. So who wants to read that?
And the first trumped, and came to pass hail and fire being mixed in blood, and was cast into the earth, and the third of the earth was incinerated, and all green grass was incinerated.
Now, what if you reread that and put land instead of
Mhm.
earth?
Well, that was,
Mhm.
I was reading
Yeah.
land in my mind.
Yeah.
I was thinking land.
Yeah, so let's reread
Oh,
this.
the
Okay.
land.
And the yeah,
And the
Oh.
first
and the
trumped,
first trumpet, and came to pass hail and fire being mixed in the blood, and was cast into the land,
Mhm.
meaning the land of Israel,
Mhm.
and the third of the land was incinerated, and all of the green grass was incinerated.
in that
That
third
changes
of Israel, in
everything.
that third,
Just that changing that word
yeah.
earth to land, because it's the same Greek word for
Mhm.
either one. And whenever you see the land of Israel anywhere in the Greek Septuagint throughout the entire Old Testament, it's using those same three Greek letters. And I don't know Greek well, so I couldn't tell
What
you
are they,
what it is.
Nancy? Those three Greek
Those
letters.
three,
Can we open
three
the door?
letters. It
Is anybody
looks,
else hot?
looks like a Y and an N and S, but I don't know what it is.
Units.
I know. Well, I don't know.
Where is it? Which one?
Um,
The sea, the onion,
The
one
earth,
starting
where it says earth.
Cast to the earth. It's
Verses 8-7.
8-7. Okay.
Next to the
8-7,
last-
I'm in the wrong one. Okay. Just a minute. Let me find it. Yeah. Yeast.
Yeast.
Yeast. Yeah, but wait a minute.
Yeast.
There's an ton den throne.
Of the trees.
Huh?
What?
That means of
It's,
the trees. It's a little different than what it says up there. See, this is
It's
Earth.
yeah.
this says earth. So
Which we know is land.
Oh, a third of the land. It could be a third of the trees.
Yeah,
That's what you're
that's
saying.
a
That's
third
an
of the
trees.
alternative translation.
Yeah, he's saying that.
It could be a third of the
Yeah.
trees or a
Right.
third of the land was
Right.
incinerated. That changes it too.
Yes, it does.
So I wonder if somewhere that it talks about trees being burned.
Yeah. So now we're going to start getting into. Let's
That's-
turn to the
That's what
Jew,
that is.
the
That's,
Wars of the Jews.
that's where it is, right there. That's,
Oh, that's
Chapter-
where they also always
What
say,
page is that?
oh, the
Ah.
1/3 of the, or was it?
Yeah,
Let's
1/3 of
say
Earth is
one-
going to burn up.
Die,
Yeah.
die,
Yeah.
Well,
It's
land,
gonna-
Israel, right?
Yeah, but 1/3 of the land of Israel,
Yeah.
that's a
Oh
little
my goodness,
different.
that's if it's trees, like that's very specific.
Yeah, one
Like
third of the trees.
we're not talking about a third of the people.
Would a third of the
Yeah.
trees be the
Talking.
trees surrounding
This
the
is all
city?
green vegetation.
No,
Yeah, it could be.
because wasn't there a great
Yeah,
forest surrounding
yeah.
the city that they
Yeah.
had to tear down
Yeah, they
to
tear
get
it
through?
down. Yeah.
They had to.
So now you look at this a little differently. And remember in the previous seal, it says go forth and take out people that don't have the seal but don't harm any of the
Mhm.
grain.
Right.
Yeah. And well, now he's now the wrath is building, and he said, okay, now it's time to take out
Well,
some of the land.
okay, I'm gonna have to research
physical
that
land.
earth
Okay, the
thing
physical.
because
Well, that makes perfect
The
sense.
earth and the land. I can take you to one that helps you. It's in
in the Greek.
Zechariah.
I'm
In the
gonna
Greek,
research
yeah.
that, because this has a lot of appendix stuff
Yeah,
in it,
if
and it's
you-
a lot of information.
Yeah, if you need to, and this is for anybody that's listening
Okay.
online as well.
Okay.
If you're in doubt,
Uh-huh.
let me see if I can find it. I have a reference to Zechariah, where you can see very clearly. I think it's in Zechariah 12. And very clearly you see it's using that word for land. If you look in the Greek Septuagint in the
Uh-huh.
Greek,
Yeah.
you will see it has to do with the land of Israel. and it's very clear
Okay.
there that, and it's all about the land. So
Well, see, this one, now I don't trust this.
why?
Why?
Because it says the wrong word. It's not.
Well, that's because he's just going with tradition.
What
Any
does this one
translator,
say?
we are at the mercy of every translator.
That's right.
I know we are, that's what I'm saying.
And so if
Yeah, I
you
don't
look
trust
it up, it's either land or earth. And
Yeah.
Traditionally, he's going with tradition that
Yeah.
everyone says it's earth.
Yeah.
But that changes everything. It really
well, and
does.
if it's got trees, then that's very specific. Like you said,
Yeah.
green vegetation, and there's a different meaning to taking a third of green vegetation
Right.
versus
Trees.
a
third of
third
the
of
people.
or a third of the
Yeah.
animals,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. So
Earth.
it says it came to pass, hail and fire being mixed in blood, and was cast to the land, and a third of the trees was incinerated, and all the green grass was incinerated.
on that third of the land.
Yes.
Okay.
So
you guys
let's
stay in
look-
context.
Let's look at the War of the Jews, chapter 6. Book 6, chapter 1, paragraph 1.
Say that again.
War of the Jews.
Okay.
Okay.
Chapter 6.
6, if you do 6:, and then 1:1. That means
chapter
book 6, chapter 1, paragraph 1.
Now, my book won't be until the end of the month.
What were you saying Cosmos was again?
Cosmos means
It's
the whole
everything.
world.
That's everything.
okay.
World.
Like
So
the-
we're book 6, chapter
The-
1,
Verse 1.
and paragraph what?
1.
Paragraph 1.
Oh, okay. So we're at the beginning of the book.
Yeah, 6:1.
Mine has up in the right hand corner 6 dot, the book dot. What would that be?
Somebody
Chapter
chime in.
dot and then
Oh,
paragraph.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
I
right.
heard somebody try to chime in. Better keep my.
From the great extremity to which the Jews were reduced to the taking of Jerusalem by
So like
Titus.
Earth is land, right?
Yes.
Yeah, well, that word, it's a 3 Greek word, but if you look up earth in your Strong's Concordance and look up land in the Greek, they're both the same word. They've been used interchangeably in the English.
That the miseries still grew worse, and how the
Here's book
Romans
6.
made an assault upon the Tower of Antonia. That's page 881.
So so now we got more. Who wants to read? Paragraph 1.
Listen, I'll give it a whirl.
Okay.
Thus did the miseries of Jerusalem grow worse and worse every day, and the rebellious were still more irritated by the calamities they were under, even while the famine preyed upon themselves after it had preyed upon the people. And indeed, the multitude of carcasses that lay in heaps, one upon another, was a horrible sight, and produced a pestilential stench, which was a hindrance to those that would make sallies out of the city and fight the enemy. But as those were to go in battle array, who had been already used to 10,000 murders, and must tread upon those dead bodies as they marched along. So were not they terrified, nor did they pity men as they marched over them, nor did they deem the affront offered to the deceased to be any ill omen to themselves. But as they had their right hands already polluted with the murders of their own countrymen, and in that condition ran out to fight with foreigners, they seemed to me to have cast a reproach upon God himself, as if he were too slow in punishing them, for the war was not now gone on with, Anya, I can't do this.
Yes, you can.
As if he were too slow in punishing them, for the war was not now gone on with, as if they had any hope of victory. for they glorified after brutish manner in that despair of deliverance they were already in. And now Romans, although they were greatly distressed in getting together their materials, raised their bands in 21 days, after they had cut down all the trees and were in the country that adjoined to the city, for that 90 furlongs round, as I've already related. And truly, the very view itself of the country was a melancholy thing, for those places which were before adorned with trees and pleasant gardens were now become a desolate country every way, and its trees were all cut down. Nor could any foreigner that had formerly seen Judea and the most beautiful suburbs of the city, and now saw it as a desert, but lament and mourn sadly as so great a change. For the war had laid all the signs of beauty quite waste, nor if anyone that had known the place before had come on a sudden to it now, would have known it again. But though he were a city itself, yet would he have inquired for it notwithstanding.
Okay.
I don't like that. I don't like that.
But well, now we see. Okay, all the trees
All the trees were gone.
were cut down all around the city.
That was by
By the Romans did that.
And you know what? And this trumpet, this incineration, you know, they and he probably set it on fire, and then they went in and cut down.
And then it cut him down. Yeah. So,
wow.
I don't know. Has any of you been to Jerusalem today?
Mm-mm.
No.
my wife's been there, or I'm sorry, my mom's been there twice.
I wonder if outside that wall, that there might be some of that wall remaining today. I wonder if there is a forest out there now.
You know what? I've seen
seen it.
pictures of it, and I don't think so.
I've seen it on TV, and
There's
It-
nothing.
if you're
It
talking
looks
about
like
that wall
desert.
where the temple was,
No, I'm talking about the actual big city wall. The outside, the original outside city wall.
yeah, and I've seen that on Channel 4, and it's
know.
just like
Isn't it like all
I've never
desert,
seen
isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of deserty and
They've got
ruins.
some sparse shrubbery, trees and stuff,
Like-
but not much.
Like what do you call
Yeah.
them? Juniper trees.
Kind of, sort of.
They're not.
So
They're not like our
so
trees.
so it sounds like this forest that he cut down never did grow back.
Yeah.
Not into a forest, no.
Not into beautiful trees and stuff. It never really grew back.
I agree.
So that's one of the trumpets, and that's one of the judgments of the seven seals, and it never has come back. That's interesting to me.
Gosh, there was a lot of
That's
killing done.
Jordan.
Oh my
Jordan's
goodness.
pretty green.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, that's not even Israel.
Mm-mm.
But wasn't it supposed to be part of the
Supposed to
actual
be, but
promised
this
land?
about around Jerusalem itself
Yeah.
that this happened, and maybe that would be a third of the trees in the land of Israel itself. There must have been a lot of trees
Well,
around.
didn't we say it took them 3.5 years to get to
Just to get through the trees.
the
I know,
Romans to get
yeah.
through the trees?
There was, yeah,
At
I
that
don't know
time,
all
they
the
did, yeah.
details of that exactly.
I think
but yeah,
we read that, didn't we?
We did.
yeah, I
we
wasn't
did,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that ties in with all these trumpets and horns and bowls. And
No, we haven't got to any of those yet.
because everything's being destroyed. We just
Yes.
read in 8 some of it.
Yes. So
So
now
everything's
we're
being
looking at
destroyed,
the
okay.
climax of the destruction.
And the land, the word for land,
Earth is land.
it can also include humans.
No,
Yes.
this is greenery. Because
No,
this,
I'm
this
not talking about that. I'm just saying the word yes can include humans.
okay, everything on the
land.
land.
The
Okay.
people of the
Yeah,
land.
okay.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
land includes
Yeah.
the humans and
Yeah.
animals and
I can see what you're saying.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's true. Because we were made out of, well, man's made out of dust.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We make
Right,
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay. So there's that.
Wow. Wow,
Let's look
wow.
at Revelation 8 through 9. The second trumpet, the sea is struck.
Okay.
So
See, I don't like that.
I'll try.
I don't
Who
like
wants to
anything
read that?
happening to the sea. I don't
And the
like that.
second
at all.
angel trumped, and it was as a great burning mountain cast into the sea. And the third of the sea became blood, And, hold on, the third of the creatures died in the sea, and the ones having lives in their third of the ships were utterly destroyed.
Okay.
That's 8:8. I
The
think.
sea.
Or 9.
The sea.
So,
So that would be the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea.
well,
No,
no, this
Dead
is
Sea
the
is-
Mediterranean.
The Dead Sea.
How do we know this is the Mediterranean?
Well, it borders along the
the West Coast. Okay.
the Israel.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Dead
coast.
Sea was Lot's wife turning
Um,
around. That's the,
The Dead Sea is a landlocked sea.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
So we got
Mediterranean.
the
Okay.
great,
And then you got okay.
and we got the great
Is it talking about
mountain.
the sea?
Okay, so I'm gonna try reading my notes here.
Oh, you got that.
And something
okay,
like a great
It says, it says the great mountain of fire thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea becomes blood, a third of the creatures dies, and a third of the ships are destroyed.
In the Mediterranean.
I have written the Mediterranean Sea, and the mountain equals government. Exodus 15:17, and the sea is.
Did you
So
look
there's a
that up in Strong's?
representative. Did I look up this in Strong's? No, I'm taking this off it out of Marshall's
Okay,
notes.
I'm gonna look up mountain in Strong's.
There's an equivalent to like Mount Sinai, meaning the governmental structure of Israel,
You said
and Mount
Exodus.
Zion.
17.
Exodus 15:17. What does that say?
You will bring them in and plant them in the mountain of your inheritance in the place of Yahuwah, which you have made for your own dwelling, the sanctuary, O Elohim, which your hands have established. And then 18 says, and Yahuwah shall reign forever and ever.
So, what I'm remembering is like Mount Sinai would represent the law of Moses. Mount Zion represented Jerusalem and the people ruling in Jerusalem, and the spiritual kingdom. So the mountains, the different mountains, they put a spiritual representation, some governmental structure, and that God is the head of it. Does that make sense? Now, and if this is a spiritual representation of the mountain, the sea represents the Gentiles, and the land is Israel, and the Jewish state collapses and is dispersed into the Gentile nations. Does that make the sea? Okay, they would, because the sea is like everywhere out there beyond the land. It's just like vast and great. A sea is, and so that could represent the nations, because the nations is vast and great around the land of Israel. Does that make sense? And the great mountain, Mount Zion, which represents Jerusalem, gets cast into the sea and all of its peoples. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And the dispersion, so that then they get dispersed into the nations. It says 97,000 Jews were sold into slavery by Rome in AD 70. And then there's a literal interpretation that Israel was burned with fire. Revelation 18:21 says a great millstone was cast into the sea. Babylon the Great was thrown into the sea. And there's he does a parallel between Revelation 8:8 and 18:21 to show us that this. So let's go to 18:21 and see what it says.
Can I say while we're going that?
Yeah.
Used also by rabbinical writings to remove mountains or to accomplish a most difficult, stupendous, incredible thing.
Okay, here's this thing, Strong's Oros, probably from an obsolete Oro, pertaining akin to 142, which I won't read, and 3733, a mountain as if lifting itself above the plain hill, because the 3733 means something about birds, so it flies, the mountain flies into the sea.
Oh, okay.
So more or less.
Yeah.
Okay, so 18:21. Let's read that. Where is it? Right here.
Of
It
Revelation.
says, yeah, Revelation. It says, and one strong angel lifted a stone as a millstone, a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with impulse, shall the great city Babylon be thrown, and in one way shall be found in no way shall be found any more. And a sound of harpists and musicians. That's 22. Okay, so the parallel that he put together was, okay, we see in Revelation 8:8
Wow.
an angel sounded. Revelation 21a, the first half, says there was an angel. 21b, that angel is saying. So the second half, and then Revelation 8:8, the angel sounded like a great mountain being thrown into the sea. Revelation 18:21a, it's like a great millstone thrown into the sea. Revelation 21b is Babylon, a great city, thrown down with violence and not found any longer. So what he's saying is we can see the two parallels really well. That the mountain actually is the great city of Babylon, and which is Jerusalem. And we'll find later in Revelation where it says the city of Babylon, who killed our Messiah, where he was killed. So there's an equivalence we know that they called Jerusalem Babylon or Egypt.
Dang. I'm sorry, I'm just reading verse 22.
Okay.
I guess I never realized that Babylon and Jerusalem were the same.
Well, they're not. It's a spiritual significance.
Okay.
Because Babylon was hated was a great detestable place. And so
It was
he's
a place
saying
of captivity.
it was an insult to be called Babylon or to be called Egypt.
So the Christians, the ones that got out of her,
Yeah.
people called it that.
Yeah.
Where did you hear about that at first? Were you saying that the other day?
I think I might have heard it, yeah.
Just like we call America Babylon today.
It's a governmental system.
It's a governmental.
Rome is a Babylon. It's an enslaving evil system.
So
That's choosing not to follow the ways of Israel.
So they're using this parallel to show us that Revelation 8:8 is really talking about the reference that Jerusalem is the mountain, and it is being cast down. It's a governmental system. It's being destroyed, utterly destroyed, and that governmental system will never be rebuilt again.
And a third of the ships were utterly destroyed. That's commerce.
Yeah,
That's
and
business and commerce.
so then if we read in the War of the Jews, I have a couple different places. Let me see. Well, let me read a little bit more first before we get in there. Matthew 21:20-22. We won't go through all these. And Mark 11:20. Okay, write this down. Matthew 21, verses 20-22.
Okay.
Mark 11:21-24.
Wait a minute. Matthew and then Mark.
Mark 11:21-24. They're parallel passages.
Okay.
They're about when Yahushua says, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, be cast into the sea.
Right.
He was probably pointing at the Temple Mount.
Oh,
Say to this
that makes
mountain, be
sense.
cast into the sea. If
Yeah,
you
it
have
does.
faith as a
Yeah.
mustard seed.
Yeah.
Isn't that?
Yeah.
I get hair stand on my head.
Yeah.
What is Mark 11 again?
Mark
11.
11:21-24.
Okay. I gotta write it down.
I think you've given us those before.
Yeah, and then it's confirmed in Revelation 8, 3-4, and then 8 and 9, Mount Zion, Psalms 48, 11, 74, 2, 25, 1, Isaiah 8, 18. If you want all these, I can.
No.
But I'll, yeah, we're not going to look these up. But 10, 12, 24, 23, 29, 8, and then Joel 2, 32. We see the equivalents of Mount Zion being Jerusalem. Of all those. This mountain is a standard expression of the Temple Mount. And praying in faith for its destruction. That was the temple had become
Praying
so
in faith
for
its
destruction, the destruction of the temple, not a physical mountain to be moved. Because he said,
So
say
are we
to
allowed
this
say
mountain.
that same prayer today?
Yeah. Wow. That's changes everything
See?
about that.
See, this is all learning
Wow.
who we are,
Wow.
boys and girls. This is Karen, we were talking earlier about
before everything went about getting the gifts,
yes,
getting anointed
yes,
with the
yes,
gifts.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Revelation 8:8 parallels Jeremiah 51, 25, and 42. No, do you guys want to read that or not?
No, we're not going to make it through
Okay.
this chapter if we don't get our
March, okay. And then this happened between March and April 67 and June
The
60.
second trump,
The
sea truck.
Well, I have two references. Okay, so we're gonna look Wars, book 3, chapter 10,
I got
and
that one.
paragraph 9.
Book 3, chapter
Oh, book
10,
3.
paragraph 9.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I have written here that this happened somewhere around March and April.
3:10:9, is that what you said?
Yeah,
3:10:9.
3:10
9.
9.
Okay. Do you want me to read the whole thing?
Hey.
Yeah, hold on, let me get there. I never got the chance to open these and read them. I just wrote down the references and
Wow. This
3:10.
3:10:9.
Okay, it's chapter 10.
8:02.
I'm gonna get my
Or what did I write
Page
down the
802.
other one that we used? I don't know, apparently.
You said 8:02.
Book 3, chapter 10. Yeah. 8:02.
Reading Josephus helps to really clarify all this. Okay, number 9. Whoa, that's long. Okay,
I can read it.
okay, go for it.
But now, when the vessels were gotten ready, Vespasian put upon shipboard as many of his forces as he thought sufficient to be too hard for those that were upon the lake, and set sail after them. Now those which were driven into the lake could neither fly to the land, where all was in their enemies' hands and in war against them, nor could they fight upon the level by the sea, for their ships were too small, and fitted only for piracy. They were too weak to fight Vespasian vessels, and the mariners that were in them were so few that they were afraid to come near the Romans, who attacked them in great numbers. However, as they sailed round about the vessels, and sometimes as they came near them, they threw stones at the Romans when they were a good way off, or came closer and fought them. Yet did they receive the greatest harm themselves in both cases. As for the stones they threw at the Romans, they only made a sound one after another, for they threw them against such as were in their armor, while the Roman darts could reach the Jews themselves. And when they ventured to come near the Romans, they became sufferers themselves, before they could do any harm to the other, and were drowned, they and their ships together. As for those that endeavored to come to an actual fight, the Romans ran many of them through their long poles. Sometimes the Romans leaped into their ships with swords in their hands and slew them. But when some of them met the vessels, the Romans caught them by the middle
I think she did.
Well, keep reading, keep reading.
and destroyed at once their ships and themselves who were taken in them. And for such as were drowning in the sea, if they lifted their heads up above the water, they were either killed by darts or caught by the vessels. But if in the desperate case they were in, they attempted to swim to their enemies, the Romans cut off either their heads or their hands. And indeed they were destroyed after various manners everywhere, till the rest, being put to flight, were forced to get upon the land, while the vessels encompassed them about on the sea. But as many of these were repulsed when they were getting ashore, they were killed by the darts upon the lake. And the Romans leaped out of their vessels and destroyed a great many more upon the land. One might then see the lake all bloody and full of dead bodies, for not one of them escaped. And a terrible stink and a very sad sight there was on the following days over the country. For as for the shores, they were full of shipwrecks and of dead bodies, all swelled. And as the dead bodies were inflamed by the sun and putrefied, they corrupted the air in so much that the misery was not only the object of commiseration to the Jews, but to those who hated them, and had been the authors of that misery. This was the upshot of the sea fight. The number of the slain, including those that were killed in the city before, was 6,500.
Wow.
Wow. What a horrible,
Yeah.
horrible thing.
Wow. So they could, well, so now we see the blood. We definitely see the blood. And if it was that bad, it would kill the fish too.
Oh, heck yeah. The putrid.
Contamination of, it could.
Yeah.
The creatures
Well, in
of
that
the
battle,
sea.
yeah.
Or unless the creatures of the sea were considered the seamen, the people that,
Wow. So when you're doing your notes, do you note in your Josephus that this is referring to Revelation chapter 8?
I have done that in the past, but yeah, we could do that.
Or in your Bible you reference that
Yes,
this
that's
is
what I was
Josephus?
doing. Yes, that's what I was doing in other spots.
Okay.
And I didn't do that here, but yes.
You know, I can see, I mean, this would take your entire life and you still wouldn't know squat.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. For sure.
Yeah, so there's another reference too. So that's wars. I'm going to write that in here. I was writing it in my Bible because chances of me going to this is very rare.
This says created things, so it could be
10,
creatures.
9.
It says created things?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Created
Yeah.
things
Okay.
general, so
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it could be the people, the seamen.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay. And then let's look at, we have Wars 3, 9, and 3, referring to the same thing. So Wars, book 3, 9, chapter 9, paragraph 3.
We already read that.
I know.
Book 3.
We just read.
We just read 10.
We read 10.
We read book 3, started and read all of chapter 9.
And we read chapter 10. I mean, we read paragraph 10, not chapter 10.
Book 3,
Chapter 10,
paragraph
paragraph 9.
9.
Now we're going to book 3, chapter 9, back up, chapter 9, because you're in chapter 10 there.
So you guys
Oh.
3.9
Duh.
point, what was it? What?
Paragraph 3.
So what page is this?
798.
Oh, where are we going? Sorry.
Are you in the
798.
exact same book as her?
Yeah,
I
she.
think so.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
I
I've
was
got it
just gonna
ordered.
say mine's different. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll give me a.
Okay. So I'll read this.
Tell me where. I'm
Um,
sorry. 3, 10.
Here.
Okay, 9.
3. It's at the top, right there.
Okay, 9, 3.
Okay. Now Joppa is not naturally a haven, for it ends in a rough shore, where all the rest of it is straight, but the two ends bend toward each other, where there are deep precipices and great stones that jut out into the sea, and where the chains wherewith Andromeda was bound have left their footsteps, which attest to the antiquity of that fable. But the north wind opposes the beats upon the shore, and dashes mighty waves against the rocks which receive them, and renders the haven more dangerous than the country they had deserted. Now, as those people of Joppa were floating about in the sea in the morning, there fell a violent wind upon them. It is called by those that sail the black north wind. And there dashed their ships one against another, and dashed some of them against the rocks, and carried many of them by force, while they strove against the opposite waves into the main sea. For the shore was so rocky and had so many of the enemy upon it, that they were afraid to come to land. Nay, the waves rose so high that they drowned them. For was there any place, nor was there any place where they could fly.
Okay, stop.
Okay.
That's 2 references to guys flying, to people flying.
I know. I caught that, but I don't know what that means.
Anywhere they could fly. I
That's
wonder if like
twice.
jump out.
Fly. I don't know.
Nor any way to save themselves, while they were thrust out of the sea by the violence of the wind, if they stayed where they were, and out of the city by the violence of the Romans. And much lamentation there was when the ships were dashed against one another. Okay, we know lamenting means like
Yes.
crying.
Mhm.
I'm remembering in Revelation, in the future part, it talks about them crying because of the seaports and everybody, all of the nations, they cry, they're lamenting over Jerusalem being destroyed. And so now here they're lamenting over the ships being destroyed.
That seaport was vital to that part
Yeah.
of the world,
Yeah.
For commerce. That was.
Yeah. So there was much lamenting when the ships were dashed against one another, and the terrible noise when they were broken to the pieces. And some of the multitude that were in them were covered with waves, and so perished and a great many were distressed with shipwrecks. But some of them thought that to die by their own swords was lighter than by the sea, and so they killed themselves before they were drowned. Although the greatest part of them were carried by the waves and dashed to pieces against the abrupt parts of the rocks, insomuch that the sea was bloody a long way, and the shipping lane was full of dead bodies. For the Romans came upon those that were carried to the shore and destroyed them. And the number of the bodies that were thus thrown out of the sea were 4,200. The Romans also took the city without opposition and utterly demolished it.
And that was Joppa.
Joppa, yeah. And I have written here that happened June 67 AD.
June.
Isn't that,
June. Oh,
June of 67. Yeah. They went from city to city. It was in the War of the Jews, and they set them to fire and utterly destroyed them.
Wow.
Now, Jerusalem was one of the
So,
last strongholds. After they went to Jerusalem, they went to a bunch fled up to that high, I can't remember what it's called, that fortress, and that fortress that's in the high cliff mountain.
The Mossad.
That plateau, yeah, Masada. And it took them 3 years to
Get up
completely conquer that.
wow.
Yeah. So now we definitely see that where this can
And I was
fit.
referencing to what again?
Revelations 8 and 9. 8 and 9.
Yeah, the second trumpet, the sea struck,
Yeah.
is the
So now we see an act of God, which is the great tempest of the wind.
so. Okay, okay.
So the wind picked up those people and threw them. Yeah.
Dashed them on.
Yeah.
Destroyed all those ships.
Yeah.
And
What it's trying to do to Lincoln City.
so that was a different time than the war. So March to April of 67,
Wow.
I believe, was the other one.
Oh, I guess you need to put War of the Jews.
I wish
too,
I'd have-
So you know what?
Okay, war. So this is just a
So I
minute.
write wars. If you just write war or wars, and then I put 3
Just a
colon
minute. 3
colon
dot dot.
dot 10 colon 9.
18. Wow! Wow! Wow!
Yeah, that's enough to make you pause.
And what was this one? This one was 3
3 9 3.
3 9 3. Okay,
Yeah,
there we go.
yeah.
Wow! In 2 verses.
She might be
Yeah.
in the
Look-
pack, too.
Look how condensed he wrote it.
Ugh.
Now it's what you wanted to get to the point.
Yes.
Then we didn't understand the point.
Yes. Wow. Sometimes I just need smacked. I guess I just.
It just amazes
Nancy
me
will
how
take you
you.
out to the woodshed.
Yeah,
Uh,
I can outrun. I can outrun her.
um, so, can I,
Oh,
me too. We're gonna take a
All right, we're gonna
pause
take a
here and
pause.
have a potty break. Pause.
Yes.
Okay, we're back. Start again. Where were we?
Well, we
Okay.
were we on 10?
Yes, the third.
Starting
Yeah,
at
the
verse
third
8.
trumpet. So who wants to read that? Starting in verse 10 to 10 and 11.
Okay. And the third angel trumped, and a great star fell from out of the heaven, burning as a lamp, and it fell upon the third of the rivers and upon the springs of the waters. And the name of the star is called give me a second.
Okay.
Absinthium.
Which is wormwood.
And the third of the waters, I'm sorry. And a third of the waters became into absinthium, and many of the men died from the waters, for they were made bitter.
So that's
I don't know
wormwood.
what that word means.
Absinthium means
It's wormwood.
wormwood.
Well, I know it's wormwood, but what does it mean? You know, what's the technical-
I think it's bitter.
Yeah, but
technically
I
means
think
bitter.
that's right. I looked it up, but I can't.
I'm
I
thinking
remember it meant wormwood.
salty, or I was thinking salty.
No, I think
but
it's bitter. I'm pretty sure
it's just
yeah,
bitter.
I think so.
Yeah, that's what it says.
So, yeah. So I have here Exodus 15, 25 to 26.
So now we're going more Exodus.
Yeah. God will place on him the same plagues he did Egypt for their disobedience.
Okay.
Okay, we are
And-
in Revelation 8.
10 and 11, that's what that was?
Yeah. So Revelation 15, 25 to 26. And Deuteronomy 28, 59, 60. The star cast in is like the tree cast in by Moses at Marah to make the bitter water sweet. It's like the opposite, turning the sweet to bitter. So the wormwood, the star, like coming down and turning out all the waters to bitterness. And the wormwood, the term wormwood warns Israel of destruction, and you can write these down. Deuteronomy 29:18. Now, in the Greek Septuagint, the wormwood, this absinthium is only used here, but in the this is one instance where it shows that the Masoretic text was used periodically, because it's only in the Masoretic text that absinthium is in there.
Okay.
So look up.
Says wormwood.
Yeah, it says wormwood. Where did I go? I lost it. Oh, Deuteronomy 29:18, Jeremiah 9:15, 23:15, and then Lamentations 3:15 and 19, and Amos 5:7. And in all those instances talks about wormwood and in the Masoretic text. So that would be our regular Bibles. And there's a possible parallel between this and the adulterous woman test in Numbers 5 and 11 to 31. You guys remember, if you read the Torah much, you would remember that if there was a woman they suspected of adultery, they would, she had to drink bitter water with this scroll, and they would tear it up and put it in, and it would make her.
If she was guilty,
If she was
would
guilty.
bloat, right? Or
She
something
would,
like that?
and it would make her barren. And so think of this as if this is he considers Jerusalem as a harlot. So this would be like given the adulterous test.
There you go. Okay, that
Turning
makes
all the
sense.
water bitter, and whatever she drank, she would die if she was guilty. So that's a possibility.
I'd like more detail, the gist of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's Numbers 5, 11 to 31. And 11 to 31 talks about that, yeah.
Is she rolling over?
She was trying just a second ago.
So let's look at
Here you
the
go.
fourth trumpet,
Mhm.
8, 12 to 13.
Okay.
Okay, what, 12 to 13?
Yeah.
What?
Revelation.
Oh,
8,
you
12.
want to read.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The fourth trumpet. Who wants to read?
10. Oh, no.
Where we at?
8.
Fourth trumpet, darkness.
12.
Okay. You gonna read?
I can. Then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened. A third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. And I looked, and I heard an angel flying through the midst
A
of
what
heaven.
flying?
Eagle. Angel, mine says.
Yours says
Oh.
angel?
Ours says
Ours
eagle.
says eagle.
But
Oh, actually, down below it says it could be an angel.
angel flying through the midst of heaven,
Okay.
saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound.
So there's the woes, and it's dwelling upon the land. Those dwelling upon the land. So like it just climaxes, gets greater and greater. So okay, so what is all this with the sun being darkened and the moon? And we've seen this in Joel chapter 2 about the sun
Is it an
turning
eclipse?
dark and the moon turning us to blood.
Yeah.
And we know that in 2, I think.
Where are you going now?
But we see that. I don't know if I have it written down.
The day of the Lord.
Yeah, the day of the Lord, and then the sun and the moon going dark, the moon turning to blood, stars falling. We see it there. And then we see in book of Acts, chapter 2, where it is fulfilled. And Peter,
I don't know.
Joel 2, I think
Joel
it's,
2.
I'm not sure what the verse is. I'm doing this out of my head, that part.
Okay, Joel 2, and then what else in there?
Acts
Go to
chapter 2.
Acts 2,
Okay,
where he quotes it.
okay.
Let's go to Acts. Where's my
Okay, let's see if I can find it.
Acts? There's Acts. Keep your. Okay, Acts 2. You know, Peter's preaching here that baptism of the Holy Spirit just happens. Just the Holy Spirit just falls, and then they think they're the people onlookers looking around think they're drunk, and Peter comes and he speaks, and he says, no, they're not drunk because it's just the third hour of the day. And then verse 16, but this is the thing that was being spoken of by the prophet Joel, and it's Joel 2:28-32.
Oh, okay, got it. Joel, okay, hold on.
Joel 2.
Joel what?
2:28-32. Now he's going to quote it.
Okay.
And
32, okay, go.
And it will be in the last days, says Yahuwah, I will pour out from my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams, and indeed upon the bondmen and upon the bondwomen in those days I will pour out from my spirit, and they shall prophesy, and I will execute miracles in the heavens upward, and signs upon the earth below, blood and fire and vapor and smoke, and the sun shall be converted into darkness and the moon into blood
Wow.
before the coming of the day of the Lord, and of the great and apparent day of the Lord.
So,
Okay, so now we see Peter believes this is happening now in his day, right now, that they are in the last day. We see that he's saying that, okay, this is being fulfilled. Now the earth turning to blood, and I mean not the earth, the moon turning to blood.
what is the coming great and apparent day of the Lord?
That is the end of the age. That is when the
Okay,
destruction
that's-
of the temple.
Temple, okay.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about in Revelation.
And it
The
shall be
deception of the temple or
the destruction.
Destruction.
And it shall
Yeah.
be all whoever should call upon the name of the Lord shall be delivered.
So the moon. Okay, we've always heard the moon turning to blood is some blood moons phenomenon,
Right.
which has happened periodically through the centuries.
Yeah.
But there's something else that happens when we have it every year when the skies fill with smoke. Even this year, the skies are so full of smoke.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The
duh.
moon
It's, yes,
looks bright red,
yes.
like the blood.
And the sun looks
And the
like an
sun
orange.
is halo-y and it's darkened. We can even look at it. Because how can a third of the sun get dark? You can still see the
Just had an
sun.
eclipse.
No, smoke.
Oh.
Your smoke fills the sky. You can't see the smoke, but you can.
Does
can look
anybody remember
directly at the
Mount
sun.
St. Helen? When Mount St. Helens erupted, was everybody born then?
I
was.
You wouldn't believe the sunsets we had for a year. They were incredible. That sun looked like a big old tangerine, and you could just sit and look at it. You know.
My sister lived right up
Mhm.
there.
Yeah.
Yes. So Mary Lou, she watched it out of her front room window.
There you go.
You know, the skies were so smoky last summer. And I looked up and I'm like, well, there's a blood moon right
Yeah,
there.
you could
It's
see
bright
it.
red.
Just sit and look at
And
it.
then
Yeah.
I remember looking at the sun
Mhm.
and it's like, wow, that looks like the moon.
Well, then we have the eclipse where it was blocked. because
Yeah, it
of
was blocked
the
for a
moon or
moment.
however
Yeah.
that was, however that worked out.
Yeah, for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, so
And then, but if you think of a third of the stars going dark, this third, so, and during the war, there was great billows of
Oh,
smoke.
huge fires.
Fires.
And,
Fires,
yeah,
they were
because they
burning-
set fire to
Well, they
everything.
burned the trees down. They
in
burned
the city.
the city. They were burning cities around it. So all that smoke
They're burning
was
bodies.
turning the sun and the moon
Mhm.
to make them look different.
Oh, sure.
Does that
Oh,
make
yeah.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And let's see if I have a quotation here. It says that we're in the fourth. The imagery has long been used to depict the fall of nations and rulers. And you can write these down. Isaiah 13:9-11.
Isaiah 9-11.
Isaiah 13.
Mhm.
9-11, and then verse 19, and then Isaiah 24:19-23, and then chapter 34 4-5, then Ezekiel
chapter 34,
4-5,
4-5. Okay.
and then Ezekiel 32 7-8, and verses same, and then 32 11-12. Then we got Joel 2:10, and Joel 28:32, and then what we just read, Acts 2:16-21.
What was Joel 28?
28:32.
Acts
28 to 32.
Chapter 28, verse 32.
16. Joel, it was chapter.
2:16
The next
16-21.
in Acts, and it shall be all, whoever should call upon the name of the Lord be delivered. Men of Israel, hear these words! Exclamation point.
Yeah.
Jesus the Nazarene, a man from God, exhibited unto you powers and miracles and signs, which God did through him in your midst, as even you yourselves know. This and you just threw it away. You didn't understand. Anyway, I'm not gonna
Yeah,
read
and you
that.
can continue on. Yeah. Okay.
So it's chapter 2. What were the verses next?
Oh, that was just continuing on.
16-21.
Sticking him
So,
up.
okay. And then what I have right here, written down here is, ruler after ruler was struck down.